6:50 on the morning of March 23rd found us about 170 miles from Detalhe Island, on our way north to Fournier Bay, about another 57 miles. After breakfast, we sat and watched the scenery drift by and the deck crew cleaning up last evening's snowfall and introducing us to a new passenger. Andrew, an avid birder, entertained us with a hilarious talk, not about birding, more about birders and their quirky lifestyle. It seems Donna, the ever-vigilant photographer, caught us napping. From the ship's log. Until noon, the weather was unfavorable for operations due to wind, but the evening before, Hans, our expedition leader, was searching the charts hoping to find a sheltered place for Zodiac cruising in the afternoon. Luckily for us, years of his experience paid off. During lunch, we entered the picturesque Fournier Bay of Andros Island, and as we cruised deeper into the bay, the wind eventually ceased and the skies cleared, giving us another chance to get out on the water in Antarctica. The thing that happened next was just unbelievable. A pod of 4 orcas suddenly popped up just meters from the Hondius bow. All passengers and guides immediately rushed to outer decks to observe their majestic dance with dorsal fins and tail flukes, alternatively emerging and submerging all around the ship. A quick decision was made to anchor Hondius exactly at the spot and launch the Zodiacs. Our first group of guests embarked on the Zodiacs, and we were lucky to see the orcas from the water. The orcas had just successfully hunted a Weddell seal, and the remains could still be seen. Over the next 20 minutes, we observed the killer whales displaying surface active behaviors, including tail slapping. The orcas then regrouped and slowly traveled north, out of Fournier Bay. We observed the action from the deck since it was the red group's turn to go first. They watched the action close up and personal. Luckily, one of the Zodiac drivers, I believe it was Georgina, shared her photos with us. Before long, it was our turn. Ursula was our driver, and we got some great close-up views of 2 crab-eater seals and 2 leopard seals. The restaurant staff came out in another Zodiac and served us our choice of hot chocolate, with or without rum.
We have the last passengers on board our Zodiac.
Okay, good to know. Thank you
A
very much.
mom and calf humpback whale came by, and Ursula was great at anticipating where they would surface after a dive. The morning of March 24th found us in foul weather 128 miles north of Fournier Bay, approaching Whalers Bay and Deception Island, another 15 miles north. Deception has quite a history. It was named by fur seal hunters from Connecticut in the early 1800s because what appeared to be an ordinary island in the area actually contained a large bay almost totally hidden from the sea. The island is a ring around the flooded caldera of an active volcano with a very narrow entrance. It was used by sealers as a base from 1819 until 1825, when the fur seal population in the area was depleted. In 1906, a whaling operation began, continuing until 1931. In 1941, the British came to destroy oil tanks and remaining structures to deter the Germans from using it as a supply base for their operations in the South Atlantic during World War II. In 1942, an Argentine party arrived and left signs and flags declaring this was Argentine territory. In 1943, the British removed them. In 1944, the British set up a permanent station on Deception Island as part of Operation Tabarin, which had several purposes. One was to strengthen their claim on the Falklands, which was being threatened by both Argentina and Chile. Next was to deny safe anchorages to Germans and Japanese. The German Navy had long been raiding commerce in the South Atlantic, and there were fears the Japanese were about to begin. And also, this allowed the British to operate a weather station in support of Allied forces in the area. After the war, the British remained and expanded their scientific research, leading to the British Antarctic Survey. A Chilean Antarctic base, an Argentine base, and the British Research Station, as well as a refuge built by Chile in case their station was destroyed by fire, were all abandoned due to a volcanic eruption on December 5, 1967. The British returned in 1968, but left for good in February of 1969 when the eruptions resumed. Deception is inhabited now by penguins. And fur seals, hunted almost to extinction in 1825, but now thriving in their ancestral homeland. Whalers Bay on Deception Island was to be our last excursion in Antarctica. Those who were so inclined, and not all of us were invited to take the polar plunge. I chose to enjoy the festivities from behind the camera. This would be our last return to the Hondius from an excursion. When we were all back on board, we weighed anchor and began our 2-day passage of the Drake. The passage of the Drake on our way south from Ushuaia was calm and peaceful. It was the Drake Lake. The same could not be said of our return. We sailed through the Drake Quake. By our last night at sea, we were experiencing winds to 100 knots and seas of 30 feet. Luckily, most of us had gained our sea legs after 2 weeks at sea, and few, if any, suffered from mal de mer. During the days, we were kept entertained by a series of lectures on various topics. The chief engineer gave a talk on how salt seawater is converted to fresh water, and the head chef spoke of the logistics of requisitioning food at the bottom of South America and keeping it fresh for the 2-week voyage. We were treated to some photo slideshows from the divers and snorkelers, and from Georgina, the cruise photographer. And we saw previews of the documentary program Thomas was filming for German television. As he had through the entire trip, Hans kept us informed of our progress. We heard a great talk by everyone's favorite, Sasha, Alexander Romanovsky, Hans's assistant expedition leader from Russia, about his life and how he wound up working on a cruise ship to Antarctica. He also showed us a very interesting video about working as a guide for tourists in Pyramiden, a ghost mining town far above the Arctic Circle. Occasionally, Sasha would join with Hans in his end-of-the-day talks about what we'd done that day and what to expect tomorrow, and read and answer questions the passengers had dropped in the question box. Sometimes serious, sometimes a comedian. As I said, Sasha was everyone's favorite. For example, a question one day was, "What do women want?" Or, as Sasha read it, "What do women want?" He looked puzzled, then replied, "When you find out, please tell me." The following day he read, "What do men want?" That's easy. Men want women. A few days later the question was, "What does Sasha want?" he replied with a serious and personal answer. To watch Sasha's video, which is produced by National Geographic, just do a Google search for Pyramiden Alexander Romanovsky. I think you'll enjoy it.
So Sasha and Pierre, my assistant expedition leaders, to keep me a bit sane and to take a lot of workload in the background. There's always more work that happens behind the TV screen on the other side.
Him, from whom I borrowed the idea to buy a monopole for my binocular. And this is the second time I work with Hans, and now he is the expedition leader. And I want you all to appreciate his sacrifice, because instead of bird watching, he had to do an office job, making plans, and plans were always collapsing due to the weather conditions, but he was making new plan and new. And it was our pleasure to work with Hans. Hans, thank you very much.
The staff team has worked very hard, but there's a lot of people that within other departments of the ship that we also can't do without. So also on behalf of the staff team, a great thanks to the hotel team, to the bartenders over there, of course also the chef and the galley team, and last but not least, the divers have gotten tremendous support from the deck crew. So also for those guys.
When Sherry and Steve asked me to share a memory, a memorable moment, I guess, I thought, wow, there was just so much that happened during this trip that I don't think I will ever forget. The one thing that really stays in my mind is when we were in the Zodiacs and our guide cut the motor and said, listen. Listen to the quiet. And it was just so quiet. And you're like, that is a memory right there.
I can't remember not being enthralled with the idea of Antarctica. As a young boy, long before human travel to the moon, this was the most remote place anyone had traveled to in the universe. In 1957, our family received a Christmas card from my dad's World War II Navy buddy, Jimmy McHugh, who was serving with Admiral Richard Byrd as a radio operator during the International Geophysical Year. At south latitude 84 degrees, west longitude 174 degrees, Mount McHugh stands at an altitude of 2,600 feet, just 368 miles from the South Pole. With the card was a note telling of his experience and mentioning that as he wrote, the temperature was 56 degrees below zero Fahrenheit. Imagine a 7-year-old boy's excitement. I brought that card to school for show and tell. Shortly after, on his return, he paid a visit to our home, and I can remember shaking his hand. As a teen, I read of Douglas Mawson and his trials while serving as an expedition leader under Ernest Shackleton. Later, I read of Robert Scott, Raoul Amundsen, and Shackleton himself. The hardships these men endured to achieve their dreams of glory were unimaginable. We are truly blessed to live in an age when a young boy's dreams of experiencing the strange, the exotic, the beautiful white continent are achievable. Did we endure the bitter winds, the freezing conditions, the starvation, the physical exhaustion of those who explored Antarctica's interior in the heroic age of exploration? The worst we endured was returning from a 2 or 3 hour Zodiac cruise and shore landing cold and wet and ready to change into warm, dry clothes and to sip on a cup of hot chocolate or coffee. But seeing the curious eyes of a Gen 2 penguin as he wobbles towards you, or a crab-eater seal sunning himself on an iceberg, an albatross soaring overhead, orcas, humpback, fin whales, glaciers, mountains covered with centuries of snow, and hearing the echoing of the Hondius grinding through the ice floes as we slowly cruised through the Lumiere Channel. These are no longer dreams. They are memories.
We photographed and videoed most of the events on this trip. The one that will always remain with me is the one we didn't catch. We were eating lunch when another passenger cried out, "Oh my God!" Within seconds, everyone was at the windows. Not more than 150 feet away, a humpback whale was breaching. Not once, not twice, but 4 times. He sprang from the water to be eye level with us on the 4th deck. No photo could ever convey that experience. As we re-entered the Beagle Channel on the way to our disembarkation at Ushuaia, I wondered, had we reached the zenith of our trip? Would the remaining 2 weeks in Argentina be anticlimactic? You'll just have to continue traveling with us to find out.
By 5 p.m. on March 26th, we were approaching the entrance to the Beagle Channel, and the next morning found us docked in Ushuaia. The expedition crew worked to unload our luggage. We disembarked and boarded the bus for the airport. We were bound for El Calafate and then driving to El Sultan. But for that story, you'll have to wait for episode 9.
Who's the one who can rise above? Take a chance, do it all for love and no regrets. Up ahead there's an open door and I gotta find what I'm looking for, and I'm on my way. drum, and I'll never rest till the victory's won, and it's alright. I light 'em up and I'll take 'em down, and I feel the rush at the speed of sound. I'll find a way to make all my dreams come true, to let all the light shine through, so I can be everything I know that I could be, to find all the strength inside. Baby, just watch me fly. Now I have all I need to find the best in me. Well, isn't it time I open my mind and just believe? And it could all come down to this very moment. Yeah. When I leave the ground, you can watch me spread my wings and fly away, to make all my dreams come true, to let all the light shine through, so I can be everything I know that I could be, to find all the strength inside.